Welcome back.
Greetings, devoted listeners of ATHTP. I'm doubling down.
We're there
Part
now.
2. Part 2, episode 59, all the horrible things. We're talking from season 2 up through episode 5, which is currently where it exists on this final day of May of 2023.
And something we didn't mention in the previous episode is the cliffhanger of season 1, which I really wanted to talk about because this to me was the first time that I want to say that they kind of broke their own rules. And you were, because when you were in the RV or you're in a car, and remember when they first, the Matthews family first shows up, they kind of go around and then they come back and they end up, and we don't know the radius or like mileage of how much space is here. But the end of season 1, Sheriff Boyd takes Sarah and they go off into the woods and they go off like on this journey and they have, I would guess, miles and miles added until they get to the point where they're kind of like running out of space and time, and there's a storm coming, but they find a lighthouse.
Yes, where there's this crazy horn sound coming from, as well as the light, because they camp out. Really fun scene when they're in the tent together. And that's what I noted, those notes from 1864 were in the bottles there.
Right.
But the light that shines on it, and then the beings, whatever it is, they start scratching at it. I thought it was a Sasquatch at first.
Yeah. It felt very Blair Witch.
It did feel Blair Witch, but it was effective. And then, of course, when they come out in the morning, we got spiderweb action. We got these gross spiders fighting Boyd left and right. And the little white boy, little boy in white there in the forest, kind of saves them when things are looking dire and the sun's going down. And Boyd gets shoved into one of the teleporting tree holes. And then they get stuck in this shaft. So this is one of the cliffhangers, and then the other one is the bus rolling into town and parking at the diner. So
so if you had to guess, where would you say that this town that that everyone ends up in, where would you geographically, where would you put it?
Put it probably in Western Pennsylvania, maybe.
Okay.
That way, Midwest, still sort of close to a larger population. What would you say?
Oh, it felt very Midwest to me. And almost, if the Russos are behind it, they're from Ohio. I'm like, oh, maybe it's Ohio. But the thing that we don't have in the Midwest, lighthouses. Really, we don't really have. And that's the thing that really kind of jumped out at me is like now it feels even more Stephen King-ish. Like it's like in Maine or something.
That is really weird, but we don't know necessarily that it's a lighthouse for water. It could be like air stuff. Lighthouses like tell planes where things are too, and I don't know, flying creatures maybe we have to come. But you're right, it is very strange that there would be a lighthouse in the Midwest, which is where it clearly is and is stated like in text everywhere.
So that really jumped out at me, and it made me think that this town or whatever, it seems like it's constructed. Like there are certain things. Maybe it's like a shrunken down version of like the whole United States. Maybe there's a desert if they went the other direction. I don't know. Those are questions I have in my head. But it seemed to me like they had gotten to the coast. There was also like some mountains, which we also don't have in the Midwest.
That is true. Well, maybe a little Appalachia. If it is like, you get a touch of them, but you're right.
But the other part of it is that charter bus that shows up is from Michigan.
Is it? I missed that. That's interesting.
It's from Michigan.
And we're not clear where it's going, though, either.
No, correct. And in season 1, we also learned just from like a map on the wall in Boyd's office. I think that they probably did a poll and be like, where was everyone coming from? And it's from all over the U.S. So it also implies that this town has some sort of portal action going on, which also makes me feel very sci-fi. Like you were teleported here, and now you're stuck here in this void.
Right. And now you got me wondering about the title in a way I hadn't before, because I always assumed that from was a reference to From Hell. because those are the two that I associate the most. And I always thought it was from hell in reference to the monsters that are surrounding the town. But now I'm wondering if it has more to do with where they all from,
right?
Than
I think
monsters from hell.
I think it's probably a combination, just very ambiguous. Like people where you're from, you don't know where you're at, so where are we? All these things that you're questioning.
Well, I like it. It's probably not a great title. I've got to be honest with you. I think it makes it hard for people to put it on their radar.
Yeah, definitely. It's not like, are you watching From? And people are like, what? Yeah. The TV show From? It is tricky.
I'm watching from my lazy boy, thank you very much.
Yeah, where are you watching from? It's got marketing built into it. But so there was definitely some questions. We find out that Boyd, when he was trapped into this almost felt like, it was so narrow, it almost felt like a chimney to me.
It did feel like a chimney. That's a really good way to put it.
Not necessarily a well, but at the top of when we realize that find out that he's talking to somebody, and then that there's a rope that drops down.
Who drops that rope? Who drops that rope?
I don't know, because the guy is chained to the wall.
So that to me signals too, because we didn't talk too much about at the end of season 1 when they get the radio tower up, they do first get static, and then ultimately Jim gets the voice of this guy who sounds really ominous. Don't know if it's a warning or if it's a threat. And he's all like, you guys shouldn't be digging that hole. Your wife shouldn't be digging the hole in the basement, which they were doing because they couldn't figure out the electricity, and they were trying to figure out where the electricity was coming from. And then ultimately the house crumbles in on itself, trapping Jim. And one of my favorite characters, the bartender, Tom.
I know.
I was so sad to see him go. He was great.
Yeah, he was definitely smarter, than, like, he could have been providing. He was just the bartender, but he was a smart guy.
He was.
The thing that about that voice on the radio, though, it really reminded me of that movie with Steve Zahn and Paul Walker with Candy Cane on the radio. The guy on the radio,
Joyride.
Joyride. He doesn't necessarily sound like an authoritative, like he's in charge. He almost sounded like a truck driver to me, or like a minion, like yo, just a heads up, you shouldn't be doing that. He didn't sound like the boss to me.
Completely agree with you. I'm wondering, though, if he was the guy who threw down the rope, because there had to have been an extra element that was wanting to keep Harold Perrineau in the game. You know what I mean? If this is
right.
Because there's so many references to game-like stuff going on here. I mean, most obvious, the chess stuff with Kenny and his dad.
Right. And Jim is the one who starts putting it together that maybe we are being tested. Maybe this is a control, like an experiment. And what if the guy on the radio isn't in fact the villain, just somebody else who's there monitoring them, who's like, that's the kind of stuff from like Lost that you pull from nowhere, like,
from the others. Remember that Henry guy? Was it the weird, creepy, bug-eyed guy who was in charge of the others? Somebody who's pseudo in charge, but still doesn't really understand what's going on as a whole.
Right.
Sort of
or he's very well informed. His job is just to monitor them or something and report back, or I don't know. That's the type of things that I also love from the show, though, is that, you get things and you start to just question them. Like, who was the guy that was chained to the wall? How long has he actually been there? How did they keep him alive? It didn't seem like they were feeding him, or not feeding him well. And what the hell was in his blood?
The worms, the weird, creepy Slither-esque worms. His name was Martin, first of all, and he was a Marine. And to me, it seemed like, in terms of his age, because at first I was like, is this the older version of a character we already know? It was going in my head like Dark mode,
Right.
If you haven't seen the Dark series on Netflix, it's amazing. Yes, I'm thinking he comes from the same era as all of our monsters, milkmans and brides and such, because it would seem like he would have been in the Marines when Victor was a child in this town. So I'm thinking he's a remnant of that era.
Yeah, he could have been like a soldier in Korea, because coming out of the 1950s, it was before Vietnam, 50s, 60s. And yes, and he was elderly. He was probably in his 80s.
Yes. What is he eating? This poor guy is shackled. He reminded me of Jafar from Aladdin when he's like trying to fake out Aladdin, but he's there stuck with him. He totally reminded me of that. But you're right. The worms end up playing such a huge part because they can be transferred. And just to jump ahead to where we are now, right? It's ultimately Harold is able to get rid of it. It seems like it cures his Parkinson's too, because he's sick, and then it doesn't seem like, we don't know for sure, but when he's able to successfully move these skin worms from himself to one of the monster vampire things, the scariest one, the smiley Poindexter one,
Joker.
Yes, who has such a weird reaction at first because he straight up says,
this game.
Yes, again, back to the game stuff. But then we have kind of what reminded me of The Faculty, where he kind of like dries out from within, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like there'd been too much, what is that? What do they stick in the people? It was whatever Josh Hartnett's character was snorting.
Right.
Anyway, it dried them out. They look like these worms dried out the vampire, so they know finally that they can be killed. That's where we're at mid-season of season 2. But let's not run over all these new characters, because they're are really fun new characters that I'm excited to see what happens with them. And then there's some cliche ones that I'm not so excited to see what goes down with them. Who stood out to you?
The guy who's now forced to live on the bus, the asshole, who is just like a prick to everybody. He's got an attitude problem, and he clearly has an issue with authority.
Yes, Randall.
Yeah, he, to me, stands out the most, aside from Elgin, who has a vision of this place before they get there. So there's going to be a connection between him. I think there are people who are more connected to this place, like your Sarahs, your Victors,
your Jades,
now your Elgins. Yeah, well, yeah. People, Jade, who's starting to see things around him, like the symbols. And, now I feel like Boyd might also be connected to him, because he started having hallucinations of a ballerina that is clearly pivotal. It was in the place where Martin was strung up. But as far as new characters go, I really feel like they're only allowing us to meet a few of them. When
5, I would say, that matter.
Yeah, and 2 of them had already been killed off. The couple who'd snuck off the first night and went to the bar.
Let's talk really quick about that girl, because that was kind of one of the more impacting, episodes, based on the fact that she was again being toyed with, because she's forced to watch her boyfriend get gutted. After they've stuck a rebar through her head into a tree and a spot that enables her to continue to have consciousness. Apparently not be in pain. Didn't seem like she was in pain per se. So
no, it clearly killed off any like nerve endings.
These beings know how to torture you in different ways, in playful ways, in sadistic ways,
It might also signal that they're taking a whole new approach. Maybe things are shifting, because there's no reason for them to have not killed her. She didn't have a message to relay. She wasn't bait.
That's true. And the only thing it did bring further despair to the characters that are in the daytime. Yeah. It was a way for day people to have to see things that they don't see at night, because they're just killed. They just see the bodies. But now they're forced to have Boyd take the rebar out of her skull, and those were some fun sound effects, I tell you.
Yeah, they were. Great.
And it was impacting. Christy, certainly our medic, then rushes back to who we find out this Mary character is her ex. Or are they? They're not engaged, right? They're just.
They're not. They. Yes. I think they were engaged. They were engaged, and what is the girl's name? I'm sorry.
I think it's Mary. It's Mari. It might be Mari, but I think it's Mary.
I think you're right. And so she had visited. How long? This is where I start to question. Like, wait a minute. How long have they been gone? Because the medic's character disappeared.
She's only been there for 6 months, I want to say.
Right. So Christy disappears. Mary goes to her parents to say, like she's missing. And I think that, you're left to believe that Mary thinks that Christy just ran off, maybe a cold feet or whatever, and just leaves. Yeah. Mary has a drug issue. We find out that she's on this bus. So in theory, we could find out. Right. We could find out where the bus was headed if we were told. If it starts in Michigan, and we find out the rehab location, where it was supposed to be headed, and how
what was what was the giveaway for you that she was a druggie? For me, it was the two-toned hair.
You know, I think I was a little behind on it. I think I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if I thought she was a druggie until she starts actually taking the morphine drops, the morphine drop, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I will say that, again, this is a very controlled environment. Like, how whoever's controlling this, how did they know the girlfriend was going to go looking and then ends up in the town? It's messed up. It's like they are pawns. They are pawns on a board being moved around.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, as noted before, Kenny had a thing for Christy. Bringing in Mary here destroyed any chance, because it did seem like at the end of season 1 they were starting to come closer together. So Kenny kind of becomes a badass in the seasons 3 through 5. He's kind of like even takes control over Boyd at times, because Kenny's pissed. He's lost his dad, and he just found out that Boyd has been hiding the fact that Sarah's around still, and he learns that Sarah's the one that let the monster in that killed her dad. So Kenny's in a state in this one. He grows some lips, you know. It's impressive.
And the fact that Boyd has put aside his punishment. There's clearly no jail, but the box, like when you've only seen it used once, that's where Sarah should have been put. Right. And now that the sheriff knows that she's being told, well, actually Father Kotry was the one who found out that, you know, she has got insider information. Right. And that's the reason Boyd can't kill her or have her killed.
Because she might be the key to getting them out of there in some way.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, or so they think. It's very naive. Very naive.
It is. I was happy to see the father go because of how naive and like, oh, this has a deeper godly meaning than other characters. There's a deeper meaning, but I really hope it's not going in that direction. And based on the fact that he got his throat slit, right? Is that what happened to him?
Yeah.
I'm hoping it doesn't go that way. I was glad to see him go. That being said, now that Boyd has these worms in him, or before he got rid of them, he was then seeing him with laser ghost or something, and he was talking through things with him. That was another reason Kenny was like, "You're losing it, Boyd. I need your gun." But I'm hoping that's all done and Boyd's back in business now. But you're right. Randall is the other really big one. He's the douche who ends up getting stuck in the bus by Donna. Donna and Randall's interactions have been one of my favorite aspects of this one, because he's like a white supremacist dude, it feels like, and she just is having none of it.
Yeah. Donna's the boss. Donna's the new muscle, because Boyd is clearly not willing to punish anybody. I mean, I don't think Boyd would have made Randall go out there and sleep in the bus. I mean, the guy's a dick, and he's starting fights with everybody. He is, he adds that level of fear that you don't need. People are already terrified. You don't need to be afraid of one of your neighbors. Randall's the worst.
And as we noted, Elgin was the guy who has a vision coming into the town. He's like, we can't go in here. And he barfs on Randall. That was fun. But he is the newest one that is clearly connected to the town in a different way. And when he has a convulsion, or what is it? I'm sorry, it's not convulsion. A seizure. He has a seizure on the ground. At the exact same time that the house caves in. There was another character that had a seizure in season 1, and now I'm losing who that was. But seizures seem to be an aspect when things happen bad. Seizures are going on for people that are connected. But there are 2 other characters worth noting, because I think Elgin's going to be a big player, even though I don't understand why he didn't listen to everyone when they said get in the house. He's one of the few that's like still running around that first night, not having believed it at first or something, despite being the one that saw the visions. That I didn't get. But he ends up with Tabby and Victor, who had been under the caves. We can't neglect the fact that they had seen the monster sleeping under there. My question is, are those the same monsters that walk on top of the earth?
That's a good question, because they did not seem like the well-dressed 1950s townspeople. They seemed more like, almost like the monsters in the Descent. Like they're
right. I didn't like their design comparatively to when
Unless when they go above ground, they get turned.
That's what I'm thinking, because they're still wearing like these archetypal clothes. Like one's a cheerleader, I think.
Yeah. The milkman. Yeah.
And the only other things to note when they're underground is Tabby finds a weird suitcase with clothes in it she doesn't quite make sense of. And then the tower, there's this stone tower in a very specific structure that then plays a part throughout the first half of this season. Her son later just makes that tower on his own on the porch, and then she makes it later, which brings these little, I don't know, orphan Chloe Sevignyes from... I don't know. They just little gross looking pale girls that she's willing to commune with, but then when they start touching her, she's like, no, this is too much for me. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah. She's clearly, evolving, because when she first got there, she did not have any of these visions or powers. And like, I think when she started digging, it's almost like they're like allowing her to see more.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Before we talk about Jade, because I think Jade is probably one of the more important aspects of this, I know we're going to bop around a little bit. I wanted to mention the two other characters, the bus driver. I'm not sure about her yet, but I'm really annoyed that she still wears her name tag. Why is she? She's been there for days.
Still meeting new people. It's nice. It's like,
so this is Bacta, I believe her name is, and she's always in her bus driver uniform. That being said, the people that she's driving have bags of clothes. She's on the job, so it would kind of make sense that she wouldn't have other clothes.
Packed clothing, yeah.
I don't know what to make of her yet, but Tilly.
I was just going to say, what about Tilly?
My favorite.
She has brought a level of friendliness that I think people are forgetting about. Like everyone's so scared. They've lost almost their human connection. And Tilly it just seems wise and nice.
I'm suspicious of Tilly, but you're absolutely right. Really? She does seem like a breath of fresh air. When it rains, when they first get there, she's dancing in the rain. Come and join me, everyone.
Yeah, she seems like a character out of like Cocoon or Batteries Not Included.
And Jim actually gets the chance to ask her, where were you going? And she doesn't say a city. She says the racetrack. I go to all the racetracks around the country. What was he doing though when Tilly walks up to Jim after he's recouping from having the house cave in on him, and then he's going up to the exit sign to do something to the exit sign, and that's when Tilly walks in. She's like, "What are you doing?" Never like.
Well, I think if you remember that Tabitha had recently, when they kind of reconnected after he was stuck and she was underground, she tells Jim that those cables don't go anywhere. So I'm thinking maybe he was just reinvestigating the idea that there's power here, yet the cables don't go anywhere. Okay. So maybe he was just investigating the electricity in this space.
I assume that's it. That's got to be it. Because that's consistent with what we've seen with the lighting stuff before. But yeah, when she has conversations, they're just like odd. They're a very strange tone, and for some reason it feels like she's a mole for the bad people, and she's just like seems like the least harmless, but perhaps she is there to cause trouble. That's what I'm hoping, at least. That's
providing little information, but she does provide drugs. Do you remember? She's like, which
instigates what's her face to take them to cause potential chaos, because she gave it in front of Mary.
That's true.
To Christy, and she could be kind of this really subtle trickster character. I don't know.
Yeah, devil's advocate, just sort of like instigating things and like being. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what she does next, because she wasn't in the most recent episode, right? And yeah, she's got a part to play. Everybody has a part to play.
That's true. Because the most recent episode is one of the best ones we've seen
this season.
Yes,
it was or ever
jam packed of the season, surely. Because it was action. The episode prior to it, not a fan. I thought it very snoozy, episode 5, but episode 6
I agree.
Brought a lot to the table. And as you mentioned, the ballerina visions were super creepy. Where Boyd's kind of cracking up with that. They're running out of food now. I love the urgency there. You got the Ellis and Fatima, who we never really talked about that much in either of these casts, because I find them very stock and uninteresting. The only thing Ellis got going for him is his weirdness with his dad over his dad having killed his mom.
They seem cool now, so there's no tension there anymore.
Right. And now there was starting to be bubbling of tension between Fatima and Ellis about his father having brought Sarah back. But right when that starts to happen, because they'd seem happy-go-lucky up until then we get Ellis getting stabbed by old Carl, who
which
also had racist undertones to him.
Yeah, he can go. And in fact, I question if old Boyd was around, would he be thrown in the box for stabbing his son? Even though it was an accident, he was still
no, he was threatening. He was totally out of line.
Out of line. You could see that knife stab coming a mile away from.
And who was he mad at? He was mad at Elgin, who happens to be a person of color, and who also happens to be maybe one of next to Donna, one of the larger people in it, who he's probably scared will sneak food, sort of thing. You know, this guy thinks stereotypically, so you got to run with what he is made to think.
That's true.
Or what we're made to think about him, rather.
Right.
So
that's all very true.
That's great, and that leads to Elgin saving the day by bringing Ellis. To Christy at the hospital. So
it's very clear that Elgin is a character that's going to grow and change. You could tell he was not the type of person before he got here that would necessarily run out and put his life out on the line to save someone else. He seemed very reserved. He would visit his grandmother every Sunday, and they would create owls. But he doesn't seem like the person who would, run out there, buy these things. And he saves Ellis and Elgin are also very similar, like
they are
close
very
names.
Close. I know.
But he's brave, and he says that he doesn't do well with blood, though. I think that's going to change. I think he's going to become one of the heroes of the show. But let me ask you this, because now we've got all this tension in the, let's just call it the hospital, because I don't think, it was like a school at one point, I think, but so you've got people who don't believe Boyd. He's seeing stuff, he's got worms in him, they don't see it yet. Everyone thinks he's losing it, especially Kenny, who used to trust this man as a father figure. Now, this all builds up to the reveal that he's not lying, and they see the worms in his arm. And
did you notice who noticed first? The druggy. She's the one that saw it first. I don't know if that's significant or not, but she probably has felt that feeling of worms crawling through your skin,
but from drugs.
Right.
No, that's interesting. I don't know if I remember catching that.
I don't know if it means something. It's just 1 second there. Can I just mention one thing about her as well? It was when they bring Ellis into the bed and he is gushing blood. Mary just sticks her head in there when Christy's trying to keep this man alive. I swear I'd fight. I'm not going to take any more drugs. I swear it. Like, he's so self-consumed with herself and her relationship with Christy. She doesn't realize there's a man bleeding out on the table right here.
And she has medical training also, I think, doesn't she? She's like a nurse or something too.
Yes, she is. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had to note that. There's another funny, really funny when Ellis gets stabbed. There's a guy who pops his head around the corner, all surprised, and is just so ridiculous, extra trying to get attention sort of thing. It was amazing.
I'm sorry. They should have cut that out, probably.
I gotta make a GIF of it because it's amazing.
Let me. What do you think that Boyd's okay? Is my point, because what we see Boyd do is we see Boyd. He realizes he can give the blood. My blood is your blood. You can give it. I didn't necessarily think he was going to give it to one of these vampire creatures. I thought that was insane. We learned that they don't have any blood in their system. Right? Because it's probably a reason why they don't end up going after each other. They're animal monsters. But do you think, because it's such a risk for Boyd to do this blood transfer to his son? I mean, he calls it out that he's like, I can't do this. So the chances of them actually, showing that he's passed something to his son is, I'm going to say it's unlikely, but I question it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's out of him. If I was a betting man, I think he's clean now. It was a way of getting rid of the Parkinson stuff that we didn't want or need from him, because we need him. He's got to be a character that sticks around. As you noted, he's the rock of the show. And the Parkinson stuff seemed just like a dead end to me, and it was a way kind of like clean out his system sort of thing. And also find let them find a way how they could kill it. But I am wondering, where do you get the next worm to pass on?
Right.
Unless maybe it is still a remnant in his blood that can go to Ellis. I hope so, because they need to infect everybody with this shit so everyone can press against the neck.
Right.
They need to create the army, if you will. But what I don't understand is why all the other monster vampires then surrounded the smiley face guy who just got dehydrated, didn't care about Boyd anymore. To me, I feel like Boyd is not someone they want anymore. Because if you remember in the forest, he could see them all, and it would be hard for them not to see him, I feel like. He doesn't seem like an entity they care about anymore.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like a power he has now, potentially. There's got to be a way, I mean, this whole thing is about evening the scales and like making your odds better. So if they find a way to extract this bloody worm blood from the Joker and, administer it to the rest, could they potentially,
That's a good call. Yeah, the carcass of the Joker they could potentially
my first thought was then when he looks out there and the body's still there, it's like, well, you guys kind of have to do some sort of autopsy dissection to see what else is going on with them. So maybe there is a way where they can like create bullets with the blood.
Yes. No, that's a good direction, because they make a point of, we're going to check it out in the morning. But let's wrap this one up with what I think is, you mentioned he's grown on you. I still struggle with him, but I'm excited about where his character could be going, and I'm happy that I still don't like him, because I think Jade is going to be our big bad. We've never mentioned Christopher before, but Christopher is this figure that Victor speaks of that came into town when he was a kid, and first everybody loved him, he made everybody laugh, but then he ultimately kills everybody, and Victor was the only one that was able to hide and not get killed by this Christopher character. And
Christopher could see those same images, right? Or like
he was seeing stuff too. Similar, and then of course Jade sees Christopher. He's the only one that's seen Christopher holding up the book with the symbol that he's obsessed with, which is not the same talisman on the door. It's more like a clawy sort of 3-prong thing. He makes it with all the bottles in the bar and stuff. To me, they are setting up Jade to be the new Christopher, to be the new big bad of the town. That's what I'm seeing going on here. Because what's his face? The little kid Ethan has a weird conversation with Jade in Victor's place, in Victor's apartment when he's stealing all his stuff, being like, some symbols make people do bad things. And then Jade's like, you're a real creepy kid. That was it.
And I think that's why I like Jade, is like he speaks the truth. He's the character who's like, you're weird.
He's got good lines. He does have good lines. He's a little too frenetic for me. He's got to pull it back a little bit. But if he goes evil, I'm all on board, because that's where I see it going. How about you? Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, you know what? You brought up a lot of interesting points. I wasn't looking at it like that. I was, you kind of have all these villains already. You have a person on the radio who could end up being the big bad. I see your point. I kind of hope it isn't Jade, because I think Jade is a character who still needs full redemption from his past life and the life that he led before. I just think that he might be somebody who also needs to grow into a better person, but that's also a perfect person to create a villain from. So I don't know. That's a great question. I think I have to figure out how many more episodes we have this season. We might only have 4, but
the first season was 10, so I'm assuming this one will be 10 too.
Yeah, and I think they have to. I mean, I'm hoping for a better cliffhanger than season 1, but only because I feel like we didn't have much payoff from the start of the season from the cliffhanger. Just more questions, which is fine. I don't want too many answers yet, but I will say this: it's risky to do a lot of seasons of this show by just creating more and more questions without answers. So my hope is that we have like a couple more seasons left of this, right, where we can get to a place and we find out who's in charge of this. But I still don't know how. I mean, I guess I just don't want it to be Jade.
Okay, he's the one obsessed with his demonic symbol, and it seems like Victor keeps trying to warn him off. I shouldn't be telling you what happened because you're the one that's interested. He takes him to the car to explain this man came into town and he killed everybody. I don't know what was up with Victor's violin thing, having him play there. That was weird. I'm still unclear on that. Well, did you get it?
I don't. I don't. I thought it was a way of them connecting, so I don't know. But what do you think about this then? What do you think if like Randall might be our big bad?
I think Randall's going to be the one that's going to be one of the heroes.
You think it's the opposite? Okay.
I do. Right. I hate to say it. I don't like him now, but
I will agree with both of us and say that it's one of them.
Yes, that's fair. But you're right. It is really interesting the way that Randall, when he was in the bus and they all congregated around him, he's like, I'm not scared of you guys. And then like they just walked away. He could be somebody that's susceptible to them more than others too. You're right. Because he wants power.
I think you are right, though. The more I think about it, I think somebody from this group, from this town, almost needs to take on a new role / villain and like maybe be the main big bad, like that the powers to be that are controlling.
Work through so they can, not have as many SFX and kind of have your big bad in him.
Especially since they've found a talisman, so they found a way to like hold off the vampire type monsters. They need another monster who can work their way around more freely. Right. Maybe it's Tilly.
I hope it's Tilly. Tilly's amazing.
Yeah.
She sticks out.
Having said all that, I think the show is a lot of fun, especially when there's not a lot out right now, in my opinion, that I'm really excited about.
I know. True.
So this is filling that void, especially on Sundays. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I'd love to do, once season 2 ends, I'd love to do another follow-up and we'll just conclude.
That'd be great.
Confirm some of our suspicions. And look forward to a new season. And hopefully they get the green light on that. Oh, wait. I just lost your audio. You're gone. You're gone, sir. I'm not even getting the audio levels. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this up for us. Thank you for listening to part 2 of this From special episode of From. And remember to go on our Apple Podcasts, like and subscribe, and leave a review. Let us know your thoughts on what's going to happen for From. You can do that on our YouTube page as well. We put this on our YouTube page. And in the meantime, in the words of Enan, stay alive.